You like that, huh? The tower that stunk up heaven.
Yeah.
Genesis chapter 11.
They tried to build it to heaven, didn't they?
That's the title that gets your attention, isn't it?
I'm sure so.
Genesis chapter 11. We'll read verses 1 through 9. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. It came about as they journeyed east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks, burn them thoroughly." And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city, and a tower whose top will reach unto heaven, and let us make for ourselves a name. Otherwise we will be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have the same language. And this is what they began to do, and now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the whole earth. I read a news article some days back that reminded me of this story about the Tower of Babel. The article was concerning the construction of what will be the world's tallest building. And a picture of it, of what it would be like when it finished, and the picture actually showed the skyscraper or the tower pointing, its point was actually sitting above the clouds. You see the clouds, and you could see the top of this tower shooting up through the clouds. The same article pointed out and said that skyscrapers are considered symbols of a city's money, symbols of a city's power, symbols of pride. The world's current largest building is located in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and it is 2,717 feet high. That's 160 stories. This current construction that's underway in Saudi Arabia, this tower is projected to be completed in its construction by the year 2016. The name of it will be Kingdom Tower at a cost of $1.2 billion. It will be 3,280 feet high. Kingdom Tower will be built in a new city that is under construction in Saudi Arabia, with its foundational cost of the city being some $20 billion. Kingdom Tower will be built in this new city called Kingdom City. I recently read another very interesting article with regard to the city of Babylon that is spoken of in Revelation. And the author of that article was a converted Muslim who converted from Islam to Christianity. And his article suggested that when we as Westerners view Babylon from our own biblical viewpoint, that perhaps we get it wrong, whereas someone viewing the book of Revelation from a Middle East standpoint would perhaps point to somewhere in Saudi Arabia, a city which would be the modern day Babylon. Whether it is or not, I don't know. I'm very, very careful when it comes to the book of Revelation and making interpretation on that. But whether it's true or not, I found it very, very interesting. I found it very thought-provoking when you consider the land of Saudi Arabia and the billions of dollars that go through Saudi Arabia with regard to commerce, with regard to big oil. Certainly an area of great commerce. So I found that very, very interesting. Our text this morning is the biblical recording of man's first attempt of building a skyscraper. It was actually an act of rebellion against God. Why was it an act of rebellion? Because God had given them other instructions. This was probably sometime, perhaps maybe 100 years after the flood of Noah's day had destroyed the earth. And when Noah, after the days of Noah, after the flood, and man was re-established on the earth, God gave man a command. God's command to man was that he was to scatter and he was to replenish the earth. Well, this bunch of rebels decided that they were going to do otherwise. They didn't want to scatter and replenish the earth as God told them to do. They wanted to make a name and a city for themselves. Hence they were in rebellion against God. They had a desire to do something other than what God wanted them to do. They determined they were going to do things their own way instead of doing things God's way. We're told here that they wanted to make a name for themselves. They didn't need God. They determined they would be their own God. They would build according to their own desires rather than God's desires, and they discovered and they found that the result of their actions were that God came down and interrupted their plan. What did God do? He confused them and scattered them. They found themselves in utter chaos. I would say to you this morning that the foolishness of man will be brought to naught.
Amen.
The foolishness of man will be brought to naught. These people were foolish because they set themselves up to do their own thing rather than to do God's thing. The first thing I would suggest to you this morning is that the world still speaks the same language spiritually.
Right.
The world still speaks the same language spiritually. It is a universal language of darkness. It is a language that has been given to them by their God, the Prince of Darkness. Paul refers to him as the God of this world. His name is Satan. Jesus defined Satan as the father of lies. Have you discovered that the world is filled with lies? Why is that? Because they have the language of their father.
Exactly.
Their father is a liar. And not only are they liars, listen to what else Paul said about them over in Romans 3. He said their throat is an open grave. With their tongues they keep on deceiving. The poison of asp is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. There, folks, you have the universal spiritual language of man today. There you have it. It is a universal spiritual language of the world. The nations were scattered by God. Their literal physical tongue was changed, and yet we find them still speaking a universal tongue that is steeped in sin. They are brothers and sisters in spiritual death. It's a language that is constantly promoting itself. The world is always promoting itself. Notice what they were full of. They were full of the same thing that the world is full of today. Notice what they said to one another. Let us make bricks. Let us build a city. Let us build a tower that will reach into heaven. Let us make a name for ourselves. There's the world's universal language, folks.
Amen.
True.
You know what they were doing? They were citing the words of their father, the devil. Listen to what he had to say over in Isaiah 14. You said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mount of the assembly in the resource